So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sofia. I'll be the chair of this session. Before we start, I just have an announcement to make. We were supposed to have another participant talking. Her name was Nikita, but unfortunately for health issues, she was not able to attend. So, which are good news for the other participants, which means they'll have a little bit more time to talk and to discuss. So I'll start by telling the name of the presentation. It's entitled Diamond Winds, Life-Turn Trade Secrets. And we will have the presentation made by Filipe Marques, Lídia Fonseca, Marta Mendes, and Maria Almeida. And regarding these difficulties and alterations in the presentations, I'll say we will have around 30 minutes for your presentation, and afterwards we'll have a little bit of time to have a debate or a discussion or to share some opinions. Is that okay? So when you wish, you can start your presentation, and thank you very much.
Okay, let me try to share my screen. Can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here, attending virtually to this talk and to this interesting conference. My name is Filipe. My colleagues Lídia, Marta, and Maria are around. They can also participate if they wish and answer to the questions and make more questions. And I hope that we can get some questions by the end of this. I know this being a conference mostly about revolutions, and for that, what I can see, sociology, maybe biotechnology is a bit off topic here, but I'll try to convince you that that could be differently. Well, we collectively belong to several services and faculties here at the University of Porto. We are in the Technology Transfer Office, Faculty of Biomedical Sciences, and also a research institute. And our theme relates to a landmark decision, a court decision that basically led to the patentability of living things. And I'll briefly explain that in a moment, but firstly, let me just introduce the themes. So when we are talking about biotechnology, we can, in general, envision lots of products of these applied sciences, which are, for instance, the fermentation of the dough for bread, the fermentation of beer, the production of vaccines, the production of antibiotics, production of biofuels, and also research in chemical and biological sciences. Well, biotechnology is mostly, it can be defined as using living organisms or their derivatives as useful things to produce products and useful for society. The other theme that we are going deep into is the industrial property rights, which can be easily explained with a Coca-Cola bottle. In a Coca-Cola bottle, you can see there are several features that make it a marketable product, namely the brand Coca-Cola. It is globally known, and it can be protected as a trademark. So that is an industrial property right. Then the shape of the bottle and the design of it can also be protected as a design patent. The composition, such as the sweetener, can be protected by a patent, utility patent, and even the formula of Coca-Cola. Nevertheless, the ingredients are in the bottle. The formula is a trade secret, so it's not fully disclosed. So here you can see that Coca-Cola has 4, at least, industrial property rights associated. And when we intercross biotechnology and industrial property rights, you can see that basically we are talking about protecting biotechnological processes or products using industrial property rights, meaning that we are excluding others from making, using, or selling man-made living organisms, their components, and their derivatives. In exchange, this is very important, for the public disclosure of how it is made, except for the case of trade secrets. In that case, you don't have to publicly disclose it. The value of a trade secret is exactly that, is secret. So, having said this, let me go back to the Diamond case. Diamond is Sidney Diamond, is a prosecutor from the Patent Office in the United States that took Chakravarti, who was an inventor that worked at General Electric at the time, to court because he questioned whether his invention could be patented. His invention was, you can see here in the picture, in the left-hand side, have a flask with a dark substance that should be oil, and he invented a microorganism that could transform oil and use basically oil, and could be useful to control oil spills, for instance. And Sidney Diamond argued that because it was a living thing, it could not be patented. And Chakravarti went on and defended his position, and in Supreme Court in 1980, the Supreme Court said that being a living thing did not object to be patentable as long as it is man-made. It could not occur naturally. And this is our divergence point, that we question, what if Diamond had won? This was a very important case. And soon after, we are talking about 1980s, two other important events took place. One of those was the patent from Cohen and Boyer in the United States that disclosed how to make DNA from two different sources, to combine molecules from one organism and a different organism. That could be very important to put an interesting instruction from one organism in another organism that could not happen naturally. And that led to this famous Time cover, where one of the inventors was in the main topic, and he was associated to a company, a very profitable one. And another event that took place soon after the Chakravarti won was the Bayh-Dole Act. There was an amendment to the Patent Act in the United States that ruled that the publicly funded research that used to be of control of the government, all the inventions that were produced as a result of publicly funded research used to be owned by the government and managed by the government. They would be now managed by the universities that produced that invention, and they could assign or license these inventions to companies in exchange for royalties that could be then divided to the inventors, to the university itself. And so it should be another way of funding research and also of getting profits. And so we are here in the landmark point where imagine that that Diamond won. So maybe these two events that occurred immediately after and were very affected by the mood of biotechnology getting all these rights, they could shape completely the world that we know now today. I'll give you one example, just one example. When, as you know, maize or corn is originary from Central America, Mexico, we think. And when Europeans got to America, they took several kinds of diseases, variola, for instance, or smallpox, I think in English. Sorry for that. And we also took insects and these moths. And these insects found the maize a perfect host and start destructing the maize from native people. And centuries after, thanks to biotechnology, we found out that some bacteria could produce a substance that was insecticidal. And inventors thought that if we can transfer the information from that bacteria to maize, to the maize plant, it could perhaps prevent the biting of the moth and prevent the disease. And so they tested, they found it works, and they were granted this patent. But if so, the inventors could actually patent a living organism that was modified with a gene from, or with the instruction from a bacteria. And this was only possible because Chakrabarty won. If Diamond had won, this could at least not be possible in the way that we know today. Probably, or our speculation is that it could happen, but probably it would remain a trade secret, meaning that we would not know what is behind the mechanism behind this resistance. The company would make it a secret, and that would change completely the outcome of further inventions. Let me just show you one more thing, one more implication of this. As I said, Mexico is the homeland of these different sources of maize. They have different varieties with different colors, different tastes. And as you can see here, when you put varieties close together in the field, they get mixed. And one important thing that Mexico cares about is to keep their varieties, their native varieties, pure. But as the United States have genetically modified maize and they export it, often there are contaminants. And so the Mexican authorities are very concerned about mixing genetically modified organisms into their native species. But as you see, the genetically modified maize produces more, and Mexicans are not self-sufficient, so they have to import maize. If the mechanism by which the organism was generated was unknown, was a trade secret, we could not be able to track if we are dealing with native species, just a random variation of native species, or a genetically modified one. But since we know, because the company was forced to disclose how we produced the maize, now we can track and register the contaminations, because we know exactly what instruction was put there, and we can, by molecular means, track the modification. So this is just one example that highlights the importance of disclosing the inventions related to biology, because otherwise we could not track these things. And this was just an example, but I would like to end my presentation is short. I'm sorry, it was planned, but just to 5 to 10 minutes to leave you with some questions. But before, let me just forgot. Just to pinpoint again the importance of patents, it's important to recall that the patent is really an important thing, because differently from trade secrets, we are making the invention available for everyone. So when an inventor wants to have these patent rights, the patent rights allow him to sell the product for 20 years in a monopoly way. The inventor has to file an application at month 0, but during the process, at month 18, this publication is made available for everyone. Nowadays, you can search for it online, and you can get immediately all the information that is required to redo everything from scratch. So basically, this is a kind of disclosure. That is how the inventor pays society. Society pays the inventor by granting a monopoly, and the inventor pays society by disclosing the invention. And let me show you just one example. In case of maize, for instance, if we search this is a public available database that can be accessed by everyone. If you search by maize or corn, and a well-known company in the biotech field, that is Monsanto, and if you search for the bacteria as well, you can easily get the patent that was behind this genetically modified maize. And you can see here, have the earliest priority was when the patent was filed. And then 18 months later, you have the publication. So after that moment, everyone in the world could know how to track down this maize. This is publicly available. And then the monopoly ended 20 years later. And from that date on, everyone could produce and sell these genetically modified maize. So it's accountable. Unlike the trade secret, people can track what has been invented, and can later reproduce it. And finally, let me just provoke you a little bit with some questions. What if diamond had won? Probably other technologies that we use nowadays based in biotechnology would also be opaque, such as the genetic engineering methods that we heard about to change genome in vivo, such as CRISPR-Cas9, such as the technology that led to the RNA-based COVID-19 vaccines. And if we go deeper into this question, we could ask ourselves if the biotech companies would at all be able to persuade investors based on secrets. Because when biotechs file a patent, the patent goes public. And so the investors can be assured that the company has something to offer and something that is valuable. And that nowadays is a way to persuade investors to put money into the idea and to make it happen. If you go even deeper, the patents, one patent serves like almost a scientific article. It could be a background literature to develop a new patent, right? If all the patents were gone, if they were trade secrets, the amount of literature available would be much less. So we could ask ourselves, would bioinnovation even exist if no literature is available to build on, right? And with these provocative questions, I would like to thank you for having us and open the forum for the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Philippe. Right on time with the presentation. I was not expecting that. Thank you. We now have Lydia with us. She just joined. She is also one of the authors of the presentation. A wonderful presentation. I think I'm going to have some comments or questions or something like that for you to answer in a bit. But first, since we have a bit of time, I would like to ask Marta or Lydia if they want to add some perspectives to the questions that were raised by Philippe in the presentation, or if you want to add something to it. Do you want to say anything? I think maybe Marta, I don't know. She's been here from the beginning. Hello.
Hi. Hello. No, I've been reading about the subject, and it is a very interesting discussion that we can have ahead. So for now, I'm good. I can.
Okay, so maybe I'll ask my questions, and afterwards you can intervene and give your opinion. Maybe it's easier. Okay, so like I was saying to Filipe a bit earlier, I apologize in advance if I'm going to ask something that is not right or not appropriate, because I'm a sociologist, so my area is a bit different. But I really enjoyed your presentation, and it got me wondering about some topics. Firstly, you said you asked, what if Diamond had won? But I was planning on asking what you think about what if the Diamond Affair happened a little bit later. For example, what would be the implications if it had happened in the 19s or the early 2000s instead of the 1980s? There might be some sort of difference or impact in biotechnology, for example, and on the patent issue. I also was thinking, and I believe you mentioned it for rather briefly in your presentation, intellectual property rights regarding some sector industries like biotechnology. They may in some ways constitute a basis for inequality, which can lead to that thing you were talking about regarding transfer of knowledge. For example, in my opinion, I would like to know what you think about it, if you have thought about it, or if you also think this could be a what if issue for the future. And also, in my opinion, industrial property means a relationship between people and things or objects or what have you. So I was wondering if you think there might be some social or political dimensions of property, and what is its relationship to biotechnology now and in the future. Because you mentioned the Doyle Act, I think I'm saying it properly, but correct me if I'm not, which is something really American, related to the universities and having property and patents, and the way they promote, so to speak, the scientific knowledge is through having patents. And I was wondering if that would be something that can be applied to the Portuguese case, for example, or even to Mexico, if you think about it like the other way around. What if Mexico was the one using these types of approaches rather than big economical powers like the United States, for example? I don't know. These were some topics I was thinking about, and now I would like to hear what you think, if you agree, if you don't. So feel free to add to the conversation.
So if I can start, so now.
Okay, perfect.
I will start by the first point that you raised, the first issue, that if the Diamond versus the Diamond case occurred later on, the implications of that, if there will be some, or would it be different? So, and I would leave the other two issues for my partners. Regarding that issue about the timing of what happened was that the main discussion that was, as I can see it, the main discussion that around that decision of the Superior Court was the possibility of patenting living organisms. So that discussion already was in place for a number of years, and it still is in place. For time to time, there's still the discussion of whether we should be able to patent living organisms or not. Eventually, it will be bound to happen, a decision like this, if not in that case, it would be because of the technological advancements that occurred in those years. Sometimes dependent on that decision, others not dependent on their decisions, but because of the technological advancements that occurred in the engineering, the molecular engineering field, that was a discussion that was bound to happen. The thing is, I'm not sure if the outcomes of a later decision will be different than what happened. I believe not. However, maybe technological, I believe it will not affect the development of technology afterwards, but maybe in the terms of industry and that point it will enter into the patenting and thing. In terms of patent issues related with this, maybe it would affect it would have affected later patents. But in terms of technological advancements and innovation, I think would not affect greatly. Maybe in the field of patenting, that will be the outcome would have been different. Maybe, yes. So I pass the word floor to Filipe and Lily if they want to add up something else.
Yeah, I'll just ask Filipe to stop sharing his screen so that the people who are watching can see your faces while you are talking. So yeah, you can continue. I don't know if Lydia or Filipe want to add something to this point. Thank you very much for your answer, Marta. I understand what you're saying, but I can't help but to wonder what if the impacts of this case happening in another country instead of the United States, what would be like the implications of it? I'm not sure if that's something that you've also discussed.
I just addressed the temporal.
No, but that was my question. I was just adding something to it.
If it had to happen in the country, it could only happen in the United States. I think that is a decision that in the time that was made due to technological state of the art of the time, it was bound to happen in the United States. In Europe, maybe it would happen, and it has happened later on. But I think it could not happen in other country, I think. But
okay, but it's cool to wonder the possibilities of the what if, like we might have some type of catastrophe or something like that.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it happened for instance, in Europe. The thing is, the view, and was something that we were discussing earlier on. The patenting view is different in the United States and in Europe. And while, and it's not my argument, but it's what I've reading. I've read about the subject. The view that the United States has and the Europe has on patenting is it's a little bit different. So maybe. I think in Europe, probably the initial decision would be different. Yes, if it had happened that court in the Europe at that time, the decision would have been different. It doesn't mean that later on it would be another difference. Yes,
actually. Yeah, sorry to interrupt. Actually, I don't agree with you on that.
Okay.
Because in this point of genetic modification of microorganisms, there's not a big difference, or actually there's no difference between the United States and Europe. And so probably it happened in the United States because of somehow they were more advanced in the field at that time. But if it would happen in Europe, probably the consequence would be the same. Because it would be somehow, I would say, obvious that there's a kind of man-made manipulation, modification. So, and that complies with the prerequisites for patenting an invention. So, novelty, inventive step, and industrial application. So, I think that's. Sorry to interrupt.
No, thank you. And also, Lydia, if you want to add something to the questions or to the points that I raised earlier, I don't know if there are some more points that I raised that you don't agree or agree with. It will be great to hear a bit from you.
Actually, I don't think I quite got your second and third question. So if you could repeat or briefly.
Okay, let me see.
Sorry.
And Philippe, please help me if I'm saying it wrong. I think the second question that I raised was about the intellectual property rights and how it can lead to inequality in the field. How do you see it? And also regarding the issue of the patents, for example, since you were mentioning that there are some differences between the United States and Europe, to which cases it can lead to inequality and also within the field, because it raises a matter of ownership, like who has patents and who hasn't over what. And the third question, if there are some political or social connections with patents within biotechnology, how do you see it now, and also how do you see it in the future in Europe and in the world, for example? What is your opinion and views about it? I think I said the questions right. I'm not sure.
Mm-hmm. So I don't know if Philippe wants to start. I can mention something about the second one, and I think it's somehow we could say obvious according to what Philippe already mentioned. So patent protection, so the process of patenting is very expensive, and obviously if it doesn't happen so frequently in countries that are or can I say poorer, so and in that countries probably they will go for a trade secret instead of patent protection for eventual inventions that they create. Therefore, we as Philippe, I guess he mentioned, I was not there, but I've seen before the presentation, so I think he mentioned that the use of a trade secret will imply that innovation would not be, how can I say, Philippe, if you want to move forward so faster.
Awesome.
So because something that happens with patents is that they will have to be available to the public 18 months after submission of a patent application. So everybody will have access to that kind of inventions. And with a trade secret, that doesn't happen. So because of that access to new inventions and new technologies that promotes further innovations and further R&D developments and investment. So in the poorer countries, that cannot happen. Well, actually, they could access to that, but imagine if you are just focusing on the country. So if they cannot protect by a patent, so they'll have to just use a trade secret. So we can see here somehow kind of an inequality. I don't know if Philippe and Marta agree with this. I don't know if I'm passing what I would like to mean with this.
I can add something. It's not exactly by technology, but it's pharmaceutical. So it's more or less related. It's not an anecdote. It's actually history. The development of the contraceptive pill. The main component was developed actually in Mexico for the first time. It was developed in Mexico, and the Mexican inventors tried to sell it to the US. But nobody, or let me rephrase it. There were some religious issues, for instance. But not only that, there were also some industrial reasons for the inventors not being able to sell, because, as you know, patents are like a property, like a house. You can have it, you can sell it, you can license it.
Mm-hmm.
So they were trying to license or to sell it to the Americans to produce there, but nobody wants to buy. And the reason was, as far as I understand, that as soon as the disclosure was available, the Americans rapidly find another way to produce a compound that was different, but inspired on the Mexican one. So when you are dealing with very powerful countries with lots of resources, they easily wait a bit and produce something that can build on what you made. It needs to be inventive. It has to add something else. I think in the case of the pill was the dose, because it used to be a large dose, and with the newer molecule have lower dosage. That would mean less side effects, for instance. But as you can see, there is another way inequality can be brought about, is you can build on the poor or the impoverished country as built, and you can make it a second version that can be profitable for your country. And that's
It's like power relationships, right?
Yes, for sure. And another way, in another more recent example, is the COVID-19 vaccines. Most of the patents are in Europe and the US, at least the vaccines that we have here in the western part of the world. And there are some agreements. Lydia, correct me if I'm mistaken, but there are some agreements that are like waivers, IP waivers, so that the countries give rights temporarily to a third country to produce the vaccine, in this case, for a small amount or even free for humanitarian reasons. But you think this is bad, they only waive if they wish, this process takes long, it should be free. But think about if it was a trade secret. Nobody would share a trade secret like this, at least, because it would cease to be a secret, right? At least if you have something that is sellable or licensable, you can do it. If it is a secret, it is, in my opinion, much harder to share. And it is not the best case scenario, but it's a good thing in my opinion. I don't know if Marta or Lydia want to add something on this. This is
Yeah,
quite.
we received a question from YouTube. So
nice.
maybe I'll read the question and afterwards we can get your opinion on it. So the question is, do you think that the social culture in each continent would have an influence in the consequences if it happens somewhere else, India, for example? So this is the question. I don't know what are your opinions.
So I'm presuming that the person who asks refers to the actual outcome of the landmark case Diamond versus Chakravarti.
Yeah, I agree.
Even in the United States, I must say the final decision was very tight. It was 5-4. So I think it is plausible to say what if to start with, because actually just one person was enough to change the whole reality from there. So if I think that India should take another route, I don't know, because different cultures look at nature with different degrees of sacredness, I would say. You know, Indians take cows, they pray to the cows, or they take them as holy, right? I would think that Mexicans would beloved maize, right? Every culture has a preference for their native organisms that should not be modified, that should be protected in everything. And depending, I would say that people were working with microorganisms. I think that no culture has particular affection for microorganisms, or I would say, but maybe I'm mistaken. Let me just rephrase it, because probably the French are very keen on their fungi for their cheese, for instance. If they are trying to mess with the French fungi, I would say that perhaps the French would rule against it. But in general, let's say bacteria are not beloved by many. So I would say that actually debating this issue on microorganisms and then extrapolating for everything was actually a neutral standpoint, because there were no hard feelings about microorganisms. If it was to patent, I don't know, directly a plant or an animal that was genetically modified, and it would probably be holy for someone or sacred for someone, and that could raise a lot more of cultural influence in the decision, I would say.
Okay. So Marta and Lydia, do you want to add something to what Philip said regarding the question? No?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay, so I just have one more really small question, and I think afterwards we'll have to end the session because we are over our time. Do you think it is possible, for example, academic success in biotechnology in Portugal or in other countries to be measured only by patents? Or do you think that's not something that's within a near future, for example?
Maybe
Like who has
Marta
more
and Lydia
patents?
have the words.
Now, could you just repeat the first part of the question?
I was wondering if in Portugal, for example, if it would be possible to measure academic success in biotechnology for the number of patents on something, because I mentioned a bit of that in another question that I raised, that this is something like really American to have patents and all of that. So I was wondering if there would be a possibility for Portugal in the future to have something like that, or to aim to have something like that.
to aim as a good thing, because that is another discussion. It is already we tend to assess the academic success of our institutions by numbers. That's a fair decision. We have to have something to evaluate the success. And nowadays, there are a lot of numbers related either to the publications, to the patents, and so on. So we are particularly, then this is my point of view, of course, particularly due to a change of the European politics in the last more 10, 15 years. That is something that is being changing, and that's why in Portugal also has been changing, and it's already in place. Okay, you said if we aim to, I think it's already in place, and people tend to evaluate academic success either by the numbers of publications, patents, etc. So I think that is already a reality. The question if I agree with it or not, that's for another discussion. But I think that is already at least something that the universities and are trying to do. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I'd like to add something related to that question, because well, we can say that a country or a university is very creative or as very good inventors if they have a lot of patents in a certain field, in particular in this case in biotech. But that doesn't mean that it implies is equal to success, because there's many inventions that are not useful in society, that many companies don't want to commercialize that. So an invention is different from an innovation. There's only innovation if there is an interest from the market. So something that is important and interested for the economy and the society. So therefore, I think aside from patents, academic success could be measured by technology transfer, so by collaborations with industry, for instance, by contracts with industry, so license agreements, R&D collaborations, also this kind of let's say indicators are important, because if you have many patents but nobody is interested in commercialize that, so if they're not relevant or important for society, doesn't matter. So
okay, thank you very much. And Philippe, finally, do you have some final remarks to add to the conversation? I see you were writing, so I think you must have something to say.
Well, very interesting points were raised by my colleagues, and I agree in general. The application or the usefulness of what has been disclosed is of course important, not just the number. That's unfortunately maybe not so easy to convince people to measure. What else? Let's say there are many questions to be raised here, so many examples that we can use to highlight the importance, or at least the impact of the patents or our current patenting system. Nevertheless, I urge you to not just check the the academic publications in scientific journals, but also take a look at the patents, at the inventions. They also serve as a background literature. And maybe I disagree a little bit with Lydia. Sometimes an invention that seems non-useful now, it may actually become useful. One instance is this kind of molecules that has been incorporated in COVID-19 vaccines. They were patented some years ago, and probably they would be used more or less when needed. But the fact that it existed meant that when we needed them, they could rapidly be used to produce the vaccine that we wanted. But I must say that patents are expensive, and that is a factor of inequality, and not everyone can maintain a patent that is not self-sustainable, at least. But yeah, don't look at patents as the evil. Look at them as something useful and something that is that should be regarded as such.
Okay, so wonderful, amazing discussion. I think we're right on time with the maximum time that we have for this session. So I want to thank each and every one of you for your presence. It was lovely to be here and to discuss these topics with you. And that's basically it. I don't know if you want to share a contact or something for those who are watching on YouTube, maybe, if they have some questions or doubts, if they can contact you.
Sure. You can put my last slide again.
Okay.
You can write us. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so awesome. If no one has anything less to add, and since we don't have any more questions and we're right on the time, I'll say goodbye to every one of you, and thank you once again for being here and for the wonderful presentation that you've made today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.